Thank you. We're going to call the Wednesday, February 16th, 2022 Board of Education meeting back to order. Everyone please silence your electronic devices and we will stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Additions and deletions to the agenda since Friday mailing.
Yes, we do. In personnel considerations on 710, we'll be correcting it, not as a resignation, but as a leave of absence. 7.13, I just need to correct the spelling of the employee's name. And we will be adding 7.15, a short-term sub special education teacher, and these will all be reflected in my minutes.
Thank you. Can I get a motion for Mr. McFerrin? Mr. Hislop, all in favor? All right. Need a motion for the acceptance of the minutes of the February 2nd, 2022 BOE meeting. Mr. Engel, Mr. Hislop, all in favor?
Aye.
All right. We have presentations tonight. We will start with the overview of the initial budget and then the update on the tax cap calculation.
The only thing, thank you, Mr. Reveley, the thing, we don't have the expenditure side of things ready. We'll be doing that on the 2nd and on the 16th. There's just a lot of irons in the fire right now with negotiations. We're making some assumptions. So we'll be doing the expenditure portion of the budget in March and beginning of April. But what's important to note is our tax cap. Obviously, every year when we do our budget and our spending plan that we present to the voters, we have to offset that with revenue. One of the things that we've had to comply with is the tax cap calculation, and I'd like to go over the last 4 years of the tax cap calculation. 2020, we had a tax levy, which is what we put out to the voters, of just over $25 million. The tax cap limit that year was 5.59. In 2021, we increased it about 2.75%, which got us to $26,094,290. You'll see that in column 2021. Last year, again, we left our tax levy increase at 0. Our limit that year was about 2.89, and again, our levy was $26,094,290. So now we have to submit our tax cap calculation for the 22-23 school year. The tax base growth factor is lower than it has been in quite some time. It's 1.0069. In 2020, it was 1.0094. It was higher in both 21 and 22 than it is this year. It's been the lowest since I've been here. We know our pilots receivable. We go through that every year. And again, that's an assumption too, because many of our pilots are based on the tax rate for the year when we bill them. So we do that based on what we know today. We don't make any assumptions where the tax rate will be. We don't have that data finalized until July and August. So we go through all those things. The allowable levy growth factor is 2%, which makes sense. But again, there's been no offset for TRS and ERS because they kept the increases for those employer contributions for both ERS and TRS below the 2%. So right now, if you go to the far left column under preliminary 2023, right now we have a 4.94% tax levy limit. That means it's the limit. It's the highest we could go without requiring a supermajority. The one thing I think I'd like to point out to the board members and the public is that this is the first year that Ravena-Coeymans-Selkirk has had an available carryover from a prior year. So when you look at the line that says total levy limit before exclusions, right dead center in the middle of your page, it's $26,048,517. If that amount is lower than your bottom line, that's where you have in the previous year. So you'll see that we could have raised in 2022, tax levy limit before exclusions was $26,184,820. Our levy that we raised was only $26,094,290. The difference between those figures, because the bottom one is greater than what we actually levied, we can carry that over into the following year. What impact does that have? that means that originally, before the carryover, the allowable levy limit was 4.59, and with that amount, it's now 4.94. Again, that is the maximum. I'm just telling you what the formula is. Oddly enough, as a school district, we have to have that submitted by March 1st, which we are prepared to do, and we would make a change to it if there was a significant material change from one year to the next. And that would be something like a pilot coming on that we had to account for that really had a tremendous effect. But again, it's a moot point when we vote in May. The next page, pardon me? There'll be some things that are definitely going to be a factor in our budget, rising fuel costs, electricity, but they should be okay. We have enough budgeted there now. We're going to have some increase, but we're not worried about that right this minute. The bigger things are the number of negotiation and bargaining units that are still out that we have not settled with. There'll be assumptions made to counter that. The next page, I'm going to show you 4 years of levy data, kind of condensed without all those numbers to make it confusing. In 1920, the limit was 5.59. The actual increase was 2.75. The dollars were 698,000, and that's where we got the total tax levy, the 26 million. 2021, our limit was 0.35. We didn't have a levy limit increase, and again, we left it at 26 million. In 21-22, the limit was 2.89. We did not increase our tax levy again last year, leaving it at 26,094,000. And again, that figure does not include a star. It's just the total tax levy. Now what you're looking at in yellow is 22-23. It's the same data from the previous page, but just a little clearer. Then I wanted to let you know what 4.94 represents, $1.2 million. Which would get, if we went to the total max, we would have 27,383,348. In red at the bottom of the page is what a 2% tax cap levy increase would be at about $521,000, which means our tax levy would be $26.6 million. Again,
the word tax cap is erroneous. It is 2% tax cap is erroneous. 4.94 is our tax cap, and of course we've all been repeatedly heard in the media over the last few years and through other governments who have the obligation to follow the tax cap calculation. 2% tax cap has always been a misnomer. So as Joanna's pointed out, throughout the complex math here, it's actually 4.94 for us this year. We don't intend to go out anywhere near that number, but we could, if we so chose, under the tax cap law.
Yep.
Thanks, Joanna. Sorry.
I always did that last the other day too. So the next page just kind of is a recap of the state aid that we went over last board meeting. And again, I told you then, and I want to show you the figure now of the state aid without universal pre-K. I take that out because that's accounted for in the special aid fund. I wanted to show you that it's 18.75 million. And the only thing that might be subject to change on that line, unless things go totally askew with the governor's executive budget, is transportation. We will be doing a deeper dive, but I don't anticipate any great change in transportation aid either. Just wanted to show you that. Now, the local revenues were one of the things that we had that I told you the last time we met that we are working on, and now I want to give you an idea of where we are with our local revenues, our federal Medicaid reimbursement, and the other revenues that make up our total revenue. So if you look at pilots in 22-23, it's 2.5 million. The current year recidivism was 2.3. There's an increase right now of 213,000. Again, I don't know what that final figure will be. And you can see that receipt. I thought maybe it would be nice for you to see what the received to date was, so you have an idea of where we are today, as opposed to hit our target revenue. And right now we've received 2.4 million. Again, that is because the data changes when we bill out for many of our pilots. They're based on our tax rate. If our tax rate goes up because of assessment figures, because of all of those data that goes into the tax rate, that's going to be reflected here. So it's a little higher than the 22.3 million that we anticipated. We have already received $2.4 million in pilot revenue. Again, interest and penalties, not much of a change there. We're on point. We have 13 million, right, or 13,000 we've received right now. Not a huge amount of money, but we'll get the majority of that when we get our delinquent taxes, which will be paid on or about April 1st. It will be, anticipate coming very close to our target number of 32,000. Continuing ed, already we are at 13,000 over 15. There's no change there. Pool admissions, a slight reduction because we don't know if changing the pool filter and some of the schedule changes will have an impact on how much the pool will be available next year. Tuitions, other districts, we're going to leave the same. Yep,
Other districts, this is money we're taking in,
yes.
but we also have money going out. Is this what the difference is between money coming in, money going out? Or
Nope.
is this just revenue and that's an expense and
Correct,
another
totally
page?
different. Good question, Teddy.
Okay.
The tuitions for other districts is also, I want you to know that that represents the students that we have that are in our districts that are in foster care and we bill for.
So the two columns here, the 21 and the 22, those are, like, the 21 is what you estimated going in last year. It's not real numbers based upon this year, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Our local revenues without the federal piece was 303,000, okay? Or it was included, the federal, sorry about that. It just gives you an idea, and again, you go to rental of buildings, that is our before and after school programs, our Boces Refund, and I left that in yellow because we really haven't gotten it yet, but they've told us what our amount is. And that's an amount that fluctuates from year to year based on how Boces ends up at the end of the year based on all of their schools. So, and then we get a percentage of it based on the services we use. Right now, we're gonna get 123, and we're gonna up it to 75 on what we anticipate getting in 22-23. Generally, that comes in a little higher, but there have been years where it's been lower.
123?
Correct. And there's no way for us to get any better with that. We wouldn't want to make assumptions there because there's no guarantee we'll get it. Prior year refund for CSE, that means our children, our CPSE, our young kids that are attending programs are under from birth to age 4. We get money back from the counties, both Greene County and Albany County, based on a formula and what we report. Right now, it's just about 40 to 45,000. You can see that last year we anticipated 45 and we got 41. That can be due to enrollments in both all of the programs that are for pre-K. Unclassified revenue is what it is from year to year. That's probably one of the areas that can fluctuate the most, but again, right now we have 13,000. We might go up a little bit. Those are things that we don't anticipate. And the federal Medicaid reimbursement amount, we leave that pretty static at 100,000. Right now, we've only received $22,000 from that, but I know that we have just, they've completed a billing. We use a third party to do our billing for Medicaid, and there's another 30,000 that's coming on the books in the next, by the time we report this the next time. But I wanted you to see where we are today, what we anticipated, and what some of the changes are. Again, the Boces refund has not been received at this point. So we did a revenue comparison the last time we met, and some of the things that are highlighted were things that were subject to change. If I were to increase the property tax 2%, that's in the top figure at 26 million. The pilots we went through, local revenues from last year's 303 are now $318,000. The foundation aid, none of your state aid figures have changed. If you keep going down, building aid is the same. Federal aid is 100,000. Now the reserves and the fund balance, the two bottom figures, again, those were what we anticipated last year. Last year we anticipated utilizing 400,000 from our reserves, which were going to be the TRS and the ERS reserve, and then the remainder was our assigned fund balance to offset to balance our budget was 955,000. So if I left those two figures right now the way they are, our total revenue is $49,718,644. It's about just over a $1 million increase from the previous year's revenue. So what that means is if we have expenditures that don't exceed increase of $1 million, we're going to have no problem balancing our budget. Okay? Now, if you remember correctly, in September we went over our fund balance reserve plan. And I wanted to update you on that so you can kind of see what we talked about in September and what still may happen now. On the far right column for year ending 6/30/22, we had an unassigned fund balance of 11%. Oh, these are with changes, excuse me, it was 16.23, the second to last column, 6/30/21. our unassigned fund balance was far greater than the allowable 4%. We know why. The unexpended budget was greater than it was due to limits that we had due to the pandemic. So if we make some assumptions in our fund balances, employee benefit reserve in the far column over, it's right now at 3.6 million. That's definitely going to change. That'll be the result of our retirees that leave and get a benefit, and all of our accrued things that we have to pay for people, whether it's vacation, their retirement when they leave, sick time, anything that we pay for is accounted for in employee benefit reserve. Tax tertiary reserve, we're limited by, depending on what our liabilities are on the books, the unemployment reserve. Capital reserve, you know, we asked our voters to reestablish that and restructure it last year. We still have $2 million that we can put in the capital reserve that we can use for a capital project in the future. Your reserve for encumbrances is just a figure that's there every year. It's based on what's an open PO at the end of the year. The reserve for ERS and TRS, again, they stayed static. Remember in the previous slide, I mentioned that we didn't have to use those reserves because our unexpended expenditures were higher than we had anticipated. The reserve for repairs. We're going to ask the voters this year if they'll allow us to increase that reserve so we can put money aside for those repairs that don't require another vote to spend. They require a public hearing, and we can repair things that are a one-time expense to the district. We also could talk about in the next couple of meetings, either the 2nd or the 16th, the possibility of establishing a bus purchase reserve or a bus and vehicle purchase reserve. It's a little more, it's a tighter reserve. It is required to be funded and established by the vote of our voters, as well as funding. It's similar to a capital reserve. It's no different than what we do now with transportation. Our voters have to approve it, but they be spending the money from money that's set aside rather than a borrowing. And it can be a combination of both. I'm currently working with the attorneys to come up with language that offers the district the most flexibility in all its reserve plans. So if everything were to go that way, we put some money aside and restructured things, you'd see that our unassigned fund balance would be much lower than it is right now. We'd be positioning ourselves for a future wealth or, stability, and we'd go back to where we were in 6/30/20, where, believe it or not, we were on our way to reducing our fund balance. But I wanted you to see that. Then I thought we'd just talk about what the fund balance means. If an increase in the repair reserve requires voter authorization, and it includes a public hearing to spend. We just spoke about the bus vehicle purchase. It requires voter authorizations to establish, fund, and spend. Create a reserve for an insurance liability. That's another thing we can do. So if there's money that we would have put aside for things that aren't covered with our insurance, like one of the few things that may not be covered would be a cyber attack for ransomware. We could increase money and put aside for that. Additional money into the capital reserve requires just a board action, and we can still talk about that during the budget process. And other reserves, again, I spoke to, would need to be adjustment due to retirees. We're working with the attorneys and the auditors right now, and we'll have all the referendum language proposed to you on the 2nd and then finalized for the 16th. Again, our focus is the language in our reserves allows us flexibility, so we can have a limit where we can go to. It allows us to do what we need to do to balance our budget and maintain additional reserves. So then, to give you an idea of where our revenue would be if we did utilize additional unassigned fund balance, and let's say we went to the 1.7 million, if you go right down to the bottom of the page, and under 22-23, we'd be at a $50 million budget, but I want you to see where our revenues would be. We would have a $1.8 million increase over where last year's revenues were. So this is the first time, I'm going to say in all of my career, where the state of New York has made it a no-nonsense budget. They've told us what we're going to get. We don't have to be in limbo waiting for us. I guess the bottom could fall out. The state can change it at any time, whether it's on or before April 1st or in September, they could change what they're going to fund a school. But this is the first time that we can put numbers on a piece of paper and say, look, I am fairly certain we're going to be okay this year. So I wanted to give you an idea of where we are in revenue. The harder part is going to get all the expenditures in line over the next 60 days or 35 days, 40 days, and we're working on that now. But again, utilizing some fund balance, you'd see that we have a 3.7 increase in revenue over the previous year. In the next meeting, we're going to start our expenditure projections. We're going to finalize our language for reserves. And I do believe, as much as it's hard, I do think we're going to need an additional budget or workshop date. So I was thinking the March 30th, so we could put it on our calendars now. We have the 23rd or the 30th. I'd like to put one on the books now, and in the event that we don't need it, great. If we do need it, we'll be okay.
Okay.
Does anybody else have any questions?
Are we going to have a presentation as far as bus purchases this year? I know we have that. And I see a lot coming out with having to switch over to electric buses. And if we've looked into that, but then what other things we need to do around here? Obviously, you can't just go buy an electric bus if you don't have places to plug them in. There's a lot more to it. But I see that the governor or the state has certain requirements that are 5 years out, 10 years out. And if we go buy buses and, finance them for 5 years, they gotta be electric by a certain time of when do we start, we need to start planning or thinking about that now.
The infrastructure that's gonna cost school districts, it's gonna be the hard part for that, if they make us do that. That'll be the expensive part. We were listening as a group of business officials, and I'm not sure if you were, Dr. Bailey, or not on your superintendent level, but that's one of those mandates that's come out, and everybody goes like, oh my God, how are we gonna do it? Because they don't even know if they'll be available or what the expense will be. It's a hard thing that we can start to plan for, but if they do, and it'll be designated in the governor's budget what the end target date will be for that, and we will have no choice but to plan for it. But could I give you an idea of the expense? Not even close. This year, I know that we're looking to purchase 365 passenger buses and a 14 passenger van, so we can accommodate those smaller teams. And that's what we're looking to purchase this year.
Okay.
I think they've already got dates set.
By 2027,
7, yeah.
any new buses purchased have to be electric, and by 2035, any bus on the road in New York State's gonna have to be electric.
Right, and I do believe have no emissions. And I'm not sure if there's anything, is that just electric? There were some of our questions on
It
how they
does
would do that
mention
mandate.
something about that, and diesel is different than
Yeah.
propane and the emissions. You see it like in our New York State School Board paper, I think there's an article in there that talks about some of the things that are coming up.
It's not at all unusual for, and we've seen it through actually a number of presidential campaigns and missions since we've been alive, right, where they set goals and boundaries, and they sometimes get pushed down farther because the infrastructure isn't there or the materials aren't there.
Right. One of our local schools is planning on doing their next capital project, I believe Bethlehem. They got a grant, and they're doing, they're gonna be buying a few electric buses. They weren't sure yet. But the more important piece is the money that's gonna be required to do the infrastructure so they can be plugged in and it can work. So it'll be, and then some of the other challenges were, if our employees go to electric cars, do you allow them to take the electricity from the district? So there are so many avenues, and the changes and the restrictions. Do we let employees plug in and get buses? How do we do that? Not plug in where the buses go. It's just crazy how it's gonna be. But I don't have enough information to say what day we'll do that yet.
Okay. Thank you.
And that's it.
Okay. Have no hearings and petitions for the first session. I need a motion for one or all of the business considerations.
Make a motion for all, 6-1 through 6-14,
Okay?
6-11, sorry.
Mr. McFerrin, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Need a motion for one or all of the personnel considerations?
Same motion for 7-1 through 7-15.
Okay, do we have a second? Mr. McFerrin, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. 8 is informational items only. Special reports. Have nothing to report. Any other board members have anything they'd like to discuss?
Yeah, I should have mentioned it a couple weeks ago, but I forgot, or it was in between meetings or something, but I'm sure you folks all know that Stuart Knock passed away, a long time teacher, athletic director, coach, everything in the district. So we should have mentioned it and probably done a moment of silence at some point, but I forgot. Stuart Knock passed away.
He and his wife, both.
Both were here for 30 plus years, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Good.
When? When was the date?
January.
I might have a
Does anybody else have anything they'd like to discuss? I will turn it over to Dr. Bailey.
I talked at the last meeting about short and long-term planning for our infrastructure, and we had a meeting with Buildings and Grounds just before our last board meeting, and we had a brief meeting again today, our facilities staff with our architect, to talk about the potentiality of getting to a referendum, a small referendum for our May vote for the taxpayers. And there are items primarily from our building condition survey. But it's important to note for something that is such a short window of time that most of the things are outside, because anything that's major mechanical requires a more in-depth evaluation from state ed and takes longer in order to get approvals, and we will also need different types of quotes and specs on those. So what you'll see for the referendum that we'll be sharing more with you, probably by March 2nd we'll be able to share more with you, is a lot of small things and primarily outside. And that will fit into our longer range planning committee, which we'll form after the February break. We'll send an invitation to the community to get people on board with that. So we're thinking more about the fall, a larger scale referendum around construction and infrastructure. And that will deal more with, you'll see a lot more classroom work inside the buildings, outside the buildings, some of the high usage areas such as the playgrounds at the elementary school. Peterby has water issues, and Becker has paving issues, and the equipment that's there, updating the equipment. Also, our HVAC systems, lots of the HVAC systems in the high school are the age of the building, which obviously they were almost aged out when they installed them, and that was in 1962 or something. So you can imagine how much fun it is to try and find the right parts to do those types of repairs. So you'll see a lot more large-scale things, both from infrastructure such as heating, cooling, and lighting, to the more nuanced ones that are informed by program, where we're saying we want to ensure that we have a lab space so students can do a drone curriculum or a gaming curriculum or something that's more relevant to our career pathways. So look for an invitation after February break. We were doing so well with 10th period buses. We made it 6 consecutive days with buses, which is the first time in a long time. That was mainly due to a lot of staff returning from COVID-related illness or surgeries, and today we were unable to do that. We still fell short. But we met with drivers and the transportation staff a couple of weeks ago to talk about potential possibilities, and we needed February break to dig into how to tackle this. So over February break, we're going to do some more work on potentially reassigning routes so that we can transport some or all kids, or on an alternating basis or something. So we're never just saying nobody can stay or no one will be transported. But we have to see if we can do it. We initially tried to reduce some of our elementary bus runs, increasing the number of drivers available to deliver 10th period. We automatically initiated that last week, and it helped. That's one of the contributors to being able to do these past 6 days. It's just today that we couldn't do it. So we're still seeking to find ways to ensure that we're able to do it. If not every day, at least we can do a majority of it as frequently as we can. The cure to this is more drivers.
We still run the 5 o'clock bus, right? We still have plenty of drivers for that. Would it be something where we could change the time of the 10th period bus, or is it because of the contract we can't do that?
There'd be a few contracts involved in that, but as transportation made clear, the issue is you're spot on, 205, 240, 330. And our district is about 70 square miles, and there's some areas that are very remote. You're talking about New Baltimore and the Alcove and New Baltimore. I pointed the wrong direction. New Baltimore is that way.
240, 330. You said 240 and 330. You mean?
So we have some runs that don't get back to base until 4:15 or 4:30 because they're way off in the farthest areas of the district. So that's why we need 14 runs to do 10th period. we need 14 runs to do 10th period and 22 to do the elementary. So sometimes we need unique drivers. So it is
So-
about timing, Greg.
We need 14 runs in order to cover everywhere that they go, is what you're
That's
saying.
correct.
What if we did a sign up ahead of time? I know this would be a logistical nightmare in the bus garage, but sign up ahead of time and plot the routes then.
It is one of the things that we discussed, right? You're correct about the logistics. When, as for instance, they route, we look at the beginning of their routes. That is granted, that's all 1,800 students. But if they had, for instance, 120 students staying, it takes a significant amount of time to route. It's not something they would easily do in a day even.
Mhm.
But it is one of the things we talked about, that if we knew ahead of time or at a rotation for kids staying, we would be able to build something that was more meaningful.
But you could even change the time. Is it in the driver's contract where the routes are the time's the problem, or just in the teacher's contract?
The driver's contract is primarily around bids. So
Right.
we know that if we redesigned something, we would rebid.
Rebid,
Every
sure.
driver would be able to bid on the runs that they wanted.
So there's
But,
nothing to say that you couldn't change the time and then still have the teacher's part end at the time that it does in their contract, but have another area for students to go to for the last half an hour or hour until the buses could get back to run that route.
The logjam is at the elementary school, not during 10th period. So the buses are able to come back for 2:40. They're not able to get back for 3:30 at the elementary. That's the primary problem.
And they all have to.
I used the whiteboard. I had scribbles and dots and words all over it with all the things that you're talking about, trying to conceptualize exactly. And we had some drivers in the meeting too, which was really helpful. Drivers who know the routes and know the logistics and the difference of, today I'm delivering to the kids that belong to you, but tomorrow your kids are on the bus. So I'm not even going down the same roads in the same area. So
Mhm.
it's amazing how dynamic they are. Some of them are covering a 10 square mile area when they go way up to South Bethlehem, Furbush and Clarksville area. So they never know on any given day.
I'm just glad to see that we're getting creative and we're doing whatever we can to try to get 10th period in. So, I mean, it just seems, it's not something that's gonna ever be permanent. We're gonna be in this situation, throughout the rest of the year, and it's gonna be a juggling ball, I think, day in and day out. But as long as we keep adapting and try our best to, get some of the kids so they can stay, I think it helps.
The stakes go up the lot farther in the year we go to. We know that. For kids staying for help, events, culminating events with clubs and activities, it's important that we're able to.
I was thinking more like so what do we run, 4 or 5 o'clock buses? 4 or 5?
Say it again, Bray.
We run 4 or 5 o'clock buses, right? Something like that. Would there be more drivers available at that time to run more of a full 10th period run? There would be. So the only downfall would be you would have kids in school where the teachers, it was their time to go, so you'd have to find some kind of supervision for those kids, someplace for them to go, maybe a homework club or something like that we could staff. Not that it's a great solution, because you don't want that, but for the kids that really need it, maybe that extra hour or whatever in school wouldn't be terrible.
What we've seen is some of our club not chaperones, club advisors adapt. And instead of having a club every day after school, once a week, they would have till 5 o'clock, knowing that there's transportation, and doing that every other week or third week, so that they still have the time with the kids and they know there's transportation guaranteed at the end. But we are definitely, it is good with our interim transportation supervisors coming from the outside. She's got a different perspective. So important when we're trying to tackle something that, from the inside. This is the way we do it, these are the problems that we know we have, and this is how we've always solved it. And having the drivers, like I said, was also really helpful, because they themselves, came up with, what if we shuttle an elementary run? What if we combine? What if we take 2 stops off and move them over here?
I think one of the challenges is knowing the numbers of students that are going to be there. So we did talk about what you've just suggested, Bray, And it becomes, if we can find out ahead of time and we can schedule supervision, that's where we'd have our biggest challenges. But I will have to agree with what Dr. Bill, the bus drivers really, we got us all together and they really came up with their own solutions. We just have to hopefully remain consistent.
Joanne, have we been collecting data on that yet?
Data on what pieces of it, Bill? There's so
Just
many.
how many students are staying? Starts with that, right?
Correct.
Problem is
So-
you never know, because if there's no if you can't
Yeah.
plan on transportation, who knows
No,
if they're
but
gonna
on
stay
the
or not.
days that there is transportation, we can start to collect data points and at least is it variable? Is it real variable, or is it, it may not be the same kids, but it may be the same number. And you can start with that, and then you need to peel the onion as to where they have to go and what it would mean.
We do know, Bill, we do collect the data because every student that comes on needs to have a pass, and then the transportation department compiles that, knows who they are. When we talk to the drivers, they easily identified ebb and flow in numbers and a great diversity. It is a great diversity of kids, either because of the club they're in or because the day their teacher's available. So it's always that challenge. If it were that consistent all the time, there are always kids who are consistent all the time, but it's the variables that add to the fun of figuring out how far out they have to go and what's the right route. I don't know how they do it. All of us have used Google Maps to go 3 destinations. How about 25? And having to know the roads well enough to be able to plot that out.
And it's gotta be predominantly a middle school issue, because high school kids,
Yeah.
if they wanna stay, they find a ride. You know, very rarely do you have a kid who can't stay because he can't find a ride, so.
It's a mix. You're right. There's more middle than high school. Yeah. It's been tough, no question. The board asked about CTE enrollment and some of the processes last time. I shared something with you at the end of last week, but just to quickly go through that, what I had sent. You had asked about whether or not there was a vetting process at our end, what it included, and I was guessing from memory last time, and it does include academics, attendance, and behavior. The whole catch-all is levels of professionalism. You're about to go into a profession. But I will tell you that because our numbers have consistently been below our cap in these last 3 years, they've not used it as a rubric to prevent someone from going. They've used it as a measure to inform them in 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade, and 11th when they choose to go. So we haven't used it as a means of preventing a child from going. And the 4th qualifier is number of credits. So 11 credits qualifies you as a junior. We occasionally allow students to go who have 9 or 10 because we can see how they will get to graduation even if they're a couple behind. But we would rarely send someone who has 4 or 5 and even though they're age appropriate. We would wait until they've accumulated the credits to go because we want them to be successful, the whole package. So we do have the rubric for when we utilize it, point system, when we have more students, more applicants than fill the program. From the Boces end, they do not have a qualifier that says you can go, you can't go. When they have too many students enrolled, they go to a lottery system to make a decision about who's able to join the welding program. I included in that a list that Fred shared, said that he knew that he had. And welding programs are consistently overfilled, as our cosmetology used to be. And I think the highest enrollment we have is actually in gaming right now.
Yeah, I saw that, and I was gonna suggest maybe we could eliminate that
Program altogether, because the last thing this world needs is more video games.
Move it here, is that what you're
And just get rid of it. I mean, it's a downfall to everything right now is these stupid video games. And I know there's good money and the kids want to go do it, but that's what's destroying us. It's
And
not all they want to do is play video games.
the good news is they're learning programming, and programming has broad application. And it sparks an interest in doing that type of work, but I know where you're going, Bray. The other thing I was going to say is we were enrolled at 54 this year with a cap. We set a cap at 72. Last year we were in the 50s, the year before that in the 50s. So we do have declining enrollment in the district, so there are fewer students eligible to go. We graduated 120 students last year. That's among the smallest classes that we've had in quite a while. Whereas there were classes of 190 or so when I first came 12 years ago. So not a good answer as to why the enrollment has dipped, but know that we have it promoted from 8th grade on when we do their exploratory in 8th grade. They do it in 9th and 10th. And we have the people from Boces come over. I don't know if they did it last year, because last year was weird, but the counselors from Boces come over, they talk up the programs, and anyone who's interested goes over and takes the tour. Again, that didn't occur last year for a lot of reasons, but there is a very interactive process around it. And the last thing I was going to say, the counselor said the only influence that they really have is if they believe that a child would be better suited for one program over the other, they'll, double up on the recommendation of, I think you'd be awesome at this construction program, rather than saying, I don't think you'd like gaming. You're someone who likes to get their hands dirty, you want to do the work, rather than sitting in a lab. But other than that, they really do allow families and kids to participate in that.
So, Brian, one question I would have is that you said there's a rubric anyways to be eligible for these programs. Is the guidance department working to ensure that as they target kids, that they also identify where they may be weak within the rubric so that they can qualify to start the program that you want to get them into? You know what I mean? Because our kids falling out because of that.
We very rarely have a child fail out of CTE. Very, very rarely.
Okay.
And the investment, the hands-onness of the program, it speaks for itself.
Fall out before they even get to
Correct.
Yeah.
So,
He's saying fall out before they even get to that.
so
Before
I
they
think
get there.
you said that there's 50 kids that were in, you have a cap of 70, but you went through a whole rubric that said before you were eligible,
You have to.
you have to have a certain number of credits or whatever, you have to have this, you have to have that. Is the guidance department working to ensure those kids that they're targeting or that have targeted interest are not falling off so that they're not eligible, right? You'd hate,
And I would ask if students actually know what they need to have, because I know a few years ago, a student wanted to get a program and had no idea that they had to have all these things to get it. And by the time they could, he didn't have enough.
Yeah, about 6 years ago, we really increased our push, our education of kids. But quite frankly, Bill, every single one of our kids should be assessed in that way. I call it career ready, college ready, life ready.
right.
We've had some discussions about it at our district leadership teams. We certainly talk about it as leaders, and we've talked about it a few times at the board. Every child, we are responsible for kids to find their careers, whether they find them in year 13 or after they go to school or after they join the military. The military is a career. We're not adequately measuring it. We're putting all the ingredients in, like we know it's a chocolate chip cookie. We're putting all the ingredients in. But we're not getting a chance to clearly measure whether we've added the right ingredients to each of the kids.
Yeah.
And for CTE, that's the clearest, right? The clearest
Yeah, I'm
measurement.
just thinking that, and I go based upon personal experience. I know that there's a lot that goes on in the middle school where they take the I forgot what it was, the online kind of
Yeah.
test,
It's
that
the
says
interest, yeah.
you'd be good at X, Y, and Z, or you're interested in
Right,
this.
right.
They do a very good job of the counselor meeting with students in 8th grade about what you want to do in high school. But I just don't want kids to fall out before, they say, this is the path I want to get on, but I can't get there. I don't have the entry point, and now I'm not interested.
So you need to go to them in 8th grade and say, you need to be junior standing and have health and this to go to VOTEC.
Yes,
They need to know it clear, black and white on
I
paper.
think that's, yes,
Right?
yeah.
Yeah, it
And I
should be
feel like,
one,
yeah.
one set of standards, here it is, you know it up front, so you can work toward it.
Yeah. That's what they're doing, but really, to the next step that Bill's talking about, there's no reason why, we have a checklist. It used to be the folders. I think we use School 2 now. Remember, everybody had a guidance folder, and on the outside there are a bunch of boxes, and you checked off, they got health, they got PE, they got biology, whatever. I don't think we do a card or a sheet like that anymore. We use the computer. But we're not doing it we're doing it for graduation in New York State. That is not our sole purpose. So I think that we need to expand that work, and we need to be measuring whether they are on track to go to CTE, where are the tick boxes for that.
We
8th
are
grade, if they
so
want to go.
electronic, right? I don't understand why we don't have a login for a student that says, this is where I'm at, this is where I
Right.
need to be and progress to by this year, to get into what I want to get into, right? I think it's a two-way street. It shouldn't all be based upon the adult telling them it should be mutual. So I don't know if there's things like that.
So take the sheet, hand it to them and say, here, you check the boxes when you complete it, and then you can go.
There you go. I don't know, I'm just,
Can we bring back any past students that have gone through VOTEC and actually worked in those fields that they went to VOTEC for, to be ready for it, to come back and share that? So that they kind of visualize that it's not just a school, it's that career connection. We can preach it, but unless they see somebody who says, I was you 5 years ago, and I did this, and now I have this job, I think there would be a lot of value in that.
Yeah.
Now, we also are looking at other CTE programs. I don't know how quick, they'll be on, if we would start them as soon as next year or the year after, but that could also change or increase our numbers as well if those CTE programs are approved, the ones that, CNI is working on and other people are working on. I don't know what the timeline is for it.
What I see for our district, if we were able to do a legitimate CTE, full program, a credentialed program, we're talking about 23, 24 at the soonest. But where we're going to see great gains next year, some of the coursework that's related to work-based learning and internships. We have teachers who have been working to get their credentials, which allows them to be able to teach these courses, and students leave with not only their high school diploma, but they have the credential of work-based learning, or CEIP, Career Exploration Internship Program. They have that credential. It makes them much more relevant to employers when they leave. It proves that they've executed and they've applied the stuff that they've learned in school. That's the big growth that we're going to see next year. Our students being able to go out into the community and be more and do more work. In-house, it will take more time for us to build. The good news is we've gotten some staff in who are CTE certified. Even if they're not working in that area right now, we have, now I'm trying to think of all the dual certifications we have. We have one of our COVID teachers we've hired who is CTE certified, and our new business teacher is also, so we will see more growth in really CTE. You can see it happening, CTE program. So it's not always legit, it's not always just welding. It is, if we can have a student go work at Crossroads Ford as a mechanic or even as bookkeeping for 2 hours a day, they got a leg up on whatever comes next. So that's what we're aiming for next year. You asked about my school bucks, and I think it was Bray who had said every time he's going in, he's paying a fee, and there's a maximum amount we can pay the fee. Joanne did some research, and it is not acceptable to us the way that they're doing it, but their rationale was fairly reasonable. You know how you go to a gas pump and it says cash price, credit card price? What they've done is they've said, we're going to set a fixed rate for the fee each time you deposit money, because they're paying a fee on it. And they realize that if they allow you to deposit a year's worth of money, then they are incurring the fee. So Joanne's working with them, trying to encourage them to adjust that in some way so that people aren't annoyed. You have 4 kids in the district. You're going through $120 in 2 weeks. So Joanne's working with them to see if they would be willing to adapt that in some way and raise the cap, even if it's adjusting the percentage or the amount that they're getting. But doing $120 at a clip is not
because
rational.
even at an ATM, you take out $500 at once and get hit with one fee.
The same fee. Exactly. Although your bank charges you too.
I can't take that out personally.
So we're still doing some research on that, but we got a little bit of headway. Boces came in and did a business office audit 2 weeks ago. over a full day and then did some follow-up interviews. And they shared some preliminary results with me 2 days ago. Joanne actually hasn't even heard the majority of the information that's in there, but they're compiling a written report that we'll share with the entire board. It's an efficiency examination of the work that we're doing, the workflow, and the allocation of responsibilities. And the biggest takeaway that they repeated 13 times in the hour I spent with them is that we don't have a clear HR department. Joanne and some of her colleagues are doing the majority of the work. Fred, I, and Robin, me and Robin, our assistant, does another portion of the work. But there isn't a clear, this person is in charge of hiring practices and all the things that you've talked about before. And there could be more clarity of how we accomplish that.
So this is
task.
coming from Boces,
Say that again?
who is just trying to add additional people into our staff, which is absolutely crazy.
Or volunteer to do it for a fee.
Right, we're not a big enough district, and we're not a private corporation. We do not need a human resources department. We added one where I work, and it's, even there, it's not necessary. It just adds another layer of people that we don't need.
Well, let's read the report. And their proposal was not that we hire a department about it.
We don't need to create any more red tape. This is not government, and this is not private corporation. It's a public school. If we're going to spend money, we need to spend it on educating kids, not adding more ancillary stuff.
We do have 425 employees. Each one of them submits a triplicate form every time they're absent from school for any reason. So
That's not electronic yet?
No.
Should be. It'd be easier.
Well, at any rate, there's a lot of efficiency things that need to be addressed, and
I don't trust Boces when it comes to efficiency, that's for sure.
we'll see what they have to say. I think that's important. And the last thing I wanted to share with you, thank you for your patience, is yesterday I had the opportunity to come over and do a photo op with the top 10 students. As a reminder, we benchmark the end of the second quarter, so that means their 3.5 years of their high school career, the top 10 highest averages. So I'm going to read them from 10 to 1, so there's a level of excitement, okay? And we did a Facebook post on them yesterday and a website. So at number 10, Aiden White. At number 9, Abigail Mercer. Number 8, Julia Turing-Joe. Number 7, Isaac King. Number 6, Tiana Williams. Number 5, Sophia Orsino. Number 4, Uchenna Uba, who was also a champion in track and field.
Sectional champ.
Sectional champ, yep. Number 3, Catherine Pagnota. Number 2, Madeline Dewsbury, salutatorian. And number 1,
Got her
Molly
smarts from her mother.
McFerrin. Molly McFerrin, valedictorian. We gave them certificates yesterday. They're honored at graduation. They have special honors at graduation. And we can talk about whether you'd like to honor them at some point too. We can do that as we get closer to June. But I think that might be nice for us to do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Brian,
You were talking about the short-term, long-term planning in the beginning of your.
Yeah.
When was that survey last done that you were referencing?
The building condition survey, just now.
Oh, it's a brand new one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, and the one that began the last project that we did, Tina, was right after that last one, 5 years ago. We're required to do it 5 years, Joanne?
Yes.
Every 5 years.
Yes, it's every 5 years?
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's fresh.
Okay.
Now, there are a lot of things we couldn't address in the one from 5 years ago out of prioritization, so some of those things are back on the list too. Thank you.
Okay, we will turn it over to Mr. Engelhardt.
So there's a lot that goes on in February, so I'm going to try to cut down a little bit. But between Black History Month, Valentine's Day, and 100th day of school, which is huge in elementary school, we had a lot of really great activities and educational events going on. So at the high school, I just wanted to celebrate some clubs. The Students Against Drunk Driving is doing random acts of kindness this month to really support the need for more positivity in the world. Diversity Club, which I think if you look out in the foyer, there might be some drawings celebrating Black History Month and creating quotes around acceptance and empathy. And then our RCS robotics team, keep an eye on them. There's an article on them on our website, moves on to our regional championships, which is cool. So that's something to look forward to. And then Mr. Kerrigan wanted me to give a shout out to his department, his high school math department. They are doing some really creative stuff, and maybe he can talk a little bit tomorrow at our CNI meeting around credit recovery in the math department. So far, in a short amount of time, have already moved 8 students into recovered credit, and they have a goal of getting at least 90% of their math students to receive full credit this coming year. So good stuff there. Peter B., one of the multi-age teams, which we had talked about over the last year leading up to this. There's an article on our website around a Martin Luther King Jr. project that they worked on, so please see our website for that. Mr. Littner visited some kindergartners who learned about science and healthy habits by doing some weird experiments with eggs and brushing teeth and enamel and how soda isn't really great for your teeth. So it's a cool experiment, a way to kind of hit science and health. So that's an article that's coming. And Peter B. kicked off their Read for Ronald McDonald House Charities today, where they have activities they can do at home with parents. So that's Peter B. Middle school, Science Olympiad placed 3rd in the Capital Region. So congratulations to them. I think high school is happening this weekend, if I'm remembering right. I think so. The Science Olympiad is, or was it this past weekend?
Past weekend.
So I don't
It's,
know.
I think posted
The middle
on
school.
the website. I think the
All
high
right.
school.
I think it was 2 weeks ago, and the next one was.
Oh, maybe.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
high school
there-
is this
there's
weekend.
Something posted
Yeah.
online.
And then also at the middle school, Miss Sawyer, Miss Wiley, and some of our CCSs, they did a Valentine's for Veterans project. So they sent Valentines to local veteran organizations. That was middle school. W Becker, they are doing a community food drive to benefit the Venture Church's food pantry. So that's happening this month. They also did Valentine's Day for the Seville House seniors. And then lots of 100th Day school celebrations and Black History Month with some student reports as well. District-wide, last week was National School Counselors Week, so we did recognize our school counselors, and I want to just say thank you to all the work they do for our students and our families. And then lastly, next week, RCS, RCSTA, Regional Food Bank, Catholic Charities, and CDPHP, we're having on campus on February 24th, it's a food pickup. It's a distribution, that's the word, thank you. A food distribution for those families in need. So I know that the village as well has been receiving some inquiries regarding that. It's on our website, and we'll make sure that we promote that as well. So another way that we're promoting volunteerism within our community as well. And that's it.
Thank you. Mrs. Moran, you used your time up. Oh, no, just kidding.
No, that's all right. We are working on the budget, and that's pretty much all I wanted to comment on. The only comment I'll make tonight is when Dr. Bailey talked about the short-term planning and things like that, I think it came up at a board meeting a few months ago, where could we do a smaller project and accomplish some of those things? We have $155,000 worth of debt coming off in 2025. This would make the right time to do that type of a smaller project. And it has to be things that we have to identify. Just to give you an idea, some of the power issues that we have between Central Hudson and National Grid, we could correct some of those things. We are looking at correct some of the pool issues that we're dealing with. We have approval to do the pool filter as an emergency project. Pricing came in much higher than we assumed because we just assumed, we were thinking about the cost of the filter, not all the infrastructure, demolition, those type of items. So that's why we're doing it. I think, Teddy, you did bring it up. I think it was, can we do something, a smaller project? So that's what we're trying to do. And those are some of the targeted items that we're trying to get accomplished that are key on the building condition survey. It's the right time to do it, and by the time that project is something that we could do, it'll take still a few weeks to get it approved by the state, but we can do some of it this summer, and we can do the rest of it the next summer during the year. So that's mostly what we're trying to work on, and I'm knee-deep in the budget and all of our HR issues, so that's what I work on. Thank you.
It's important to note that there needs to be a marriage between
work that we're doing outside the building and work that we're doing inside the building.
So we're aided properly, correct.
Abatement may also be a component of that. We've got a lot of floor
Abatement,
tiles in
yes.
the district that are coming up, and by doing some abatement projects, that helps with our aidability ratio for the things that we're doing outside.
Okay, thank you. January Treasury report for review only. New business. Anybody have any new business they would like to discuss? Gene?
And I don't know if we can slide it in here or move it somewhere else. I know that through a lot of the governor's initiatives, there's a huge push to increase internet access and all of the things out into the rural areas, broadband. And I'm just curious whether or not, as a district, we have representation in some of those conversations. We have a lot of students and families that are affected by those deserts. And, you know, in order to get some of those funds into our communities, it might be helpful to show how, as a district, that demographic was left off during the pandemic. So I didn't know if there was a way that we can explore us being able to supply some of that information to the correct places that can affect where some of that funding, or work with our local towns and villages to help move that.
So good timing, Tina. About 4 weeks ago, Supervisor McHugh reached out to me, a similar question, because they have access to some ARP money as well, some of the grant money provided for recovery from COVID. And he mentioned that they wanted to dedicate some of that money to do work with cable companies to run infrastructure to some of the roads where we know there's nothing. I think they're primarily out near the alcove in that area in the town of Coeymans. And his questions were, what's our current saturation in the district, and whether we had money that we could dedicate to that as well. And we're not able to dedicate to infrastructure, but we can use it to buy technologies. For instance, last year we bought Kajits, and did I get it right this time? Yeah, thanks. Kajits, which are the wireless hotspots to give to some families. We had families graciously allow people to tag along with their internet, and we've had some businesses help out. The other thing I shared with the supervisor was the map that we knew of we've done 2 surveys of our school community to know where those wastelands, the internet wastelands are. So we do have a sense of where people have said they have no access due to financial issues, they have no access due to infrastructure, or it's not reliable for various reasons. So so at least the town of Coeymans, we've got some action on that, and he knows. And I also directed him to Paul Tonko's office. He helped our peers over at Burn Knox Westerlo when they were trying to tackle this at the beginning of the pandemic, and very graciously worked with utilities. Actually, it was Mid-Hudson Cable, I think they have up there, and they put in some like microwave antennas to help with the process and get internet where there's just nothing before. So we're making some headway on that. I felt by the end of last year, we were pretty confident we were at 99% of access in some way, shape, or form. And we've continued to support families who, for some reason, have said that. But in general, you talk about the equalizers economically, socially, financially between haves and have-nots. Internet is the biggest divide right now, and we take it for granted, so many of us. So I'm glad that it's a great question. There's some headway being made, and we were required to do that survey, maybe annually. So we continue to ask those questions of our students and families to see if we've improved as we go along.
Okay. Anything else? Anything on old business to discuss?
Have it yet, but I think Bill was gonna get some pricing on dugouts and fencing and stuff. If we could get an update at some point in time on that, that would be great, just to.
We are working on that as part of what we might put up as a referendum. We did get some
Okay.
pricing, and I'll share it at the next meeting.
Okay.
The bus stop cameras?
The bus arm cameras, I have not done anything with that. Right now, we have agreed, and we have done a PO to upgrade all of the cameras on all of our buses right now outside of the stop arms. I am working and getting information from the Albany County Free Program. I've not done that yet because I want all of our buses. We currently have 2 different platforms Some require hard drives, some are digital. By the end of this school year, we'll have everybody on the same camera system. We'll have all of that for all of our transportation vehicles, at which time I will pursue the program with the Albany County stop arm cameras. But at least the cameras that we have that we're going to be upgrading to still give us much better visibility on the outside of our buses than any of the older cameras. We have some of the 24/7 cameras right now, and we do actually have a very good snapshot. Not as good as the stop arm cameras, but that'll be something that we pursue in 22, 23.
Fred just reminded me of something about business. Along the lines of the internet.
District Wi-Fi.
Thank you. Yeah, we opened up Wi-Fi for the staff last week. Bill said it went pretty smoothly. It is important to know that anybody who joins our Wi-Fi in the district has the same freedoms and restrictions as any student would or any staff member would. So there's benefits and pros. It's an instructional opportunity to use the Wi-Fi in the building. So that's true for staff too. We do not see a problem with opening it up to the public as we move into March. It would have some of the same types of restrictions, but we know there's areas in the district where sometimes need that kind of Wi-Fi because they don't have cell service. And the last thing was email. Fred and I were talking about it earlier. The high school met, the building leadership team met with Bill Schramm and Kara Buckley, our instructional technologist, and they come up with kind of a hybridized solution to the email issue. You had asked Bill, what do students do when they are trying to apply for colleges, speak to coaches or employers off-site? Because our students are not allowed to receive emails from outside our RCS domain. So someone might send it, it could bounce back, or they might thought it was received and never got it. What we talked about is, what is the life lesson that we're trying to teach our children? Because we do want them to go somewhere. We want them to graduate and go out in the world and be successful. So what they came up with is actually to make it a part of our instructional program. Students are credentialed. They take a little mini course, could be here in the Career Cafe or embedded in another class, on making a private email. They'll use Gmail just like we use at school, but it'll be a regular Gmail, not our domain. Creating an account, composing and writing emails. I don't know if you've ever received an email from someone under the age of 25. Our students are they got their thoughts all in the message, but the structure is, my mother was a business teacher. She wouldn't feel it. At any rate, how to write a proper email. So in other words, a letter of introduction, a citation, whatever. And that as soon as they've got the credential, we open up rights to them to use that personal email on their school device. They can take that with them when they leave here. They cannot take their school email when they leave here. And we know if we're trying to teach them how to transition out into the world, juniors and seniors, they need to be able to take this with them and go out. This includes the FAFSA form. It includes other forms of application. They can now apply using their personal email account and be able to continue to use it. They can migrate all of their school documents from their school account into their new Gmail account or Google account. So there are a lot of benefits around doing it this way. We're going to have parent permission as a component of it because we're allowing students a freedom that they don't have right now. And it does not meet our acceptable use policy because we say you're not supposed to be using access private things. But I don't know what the timeline is, Bill, but at least conceptualize a way that people can get there.
I think it's you can't teach a kid how to make their own email in high school. It's too late.
They all know it already.
Like they already have all their own emails. by
Yes,
now.
but are they called, okay,
I
a
agree.
properly named email address?
Well, here's what I was going to say. What I would recommend, and again, because you want them to use them in a professional manner, you want them to be associated still with RCS. If it's going to be Gmail, it should be their name _RCSCSD@gmail.com. That way, when they're sending email, the person who's receiving it understands the school account as opposed to, a name or God forbid, something that's inappropriate at gmail.com.
The only
Right.
problem is what he was saying, though, then they can't take that email with them when
They
leave.
can too, because it's a Gmail account.
But you don't want their email to have RCSCSD in it. forever.
It could be for what they're using. Kids and people change email addresses all the time.
Well, I don't.
Well,
I'll never be able to remember another one.
I know you have it written in a tablet,
yeah.
stone tablet.
You know, anybody who's ever gone to college gets an EDU address through their college.
Yeah.
And everything goes through there for their entire time at college. That's where all the communication goes, whether they have a personal one or not. That's the mechanism that they're, you know, they can do job applications, they can do resumes, they can link all of their transcripts to it. So it seems like we're doing the exact opposite as other learning institutions.
I don't see it that way, because I think for someone who has had a Gmail account, well, you know, I don't have to talk to people who know this. I think this is a way that brings consistency during the transition time, and I think what Brian mentioned too is that there's going to be, and if we get to the place where we're doing things like digital portfolios and things like that, being able to now transition that stuff into a Google account that's already looking professional is really important.
Are they going to be allowed to access their personal email through our computers?
Yes.
Okay.
The one that they've set up through
Yeah.
that micro.
So then the other one becomes obsolete. The one at RCSCSD becomes obsolete. Why would you have that
I've
too?
emailed a lot of kids. I question if they access their email now in any
Most of
way.
them don't. I totally
It's
agree.
strange.
Most kids don't use email.
Right, because of the restrictions, I think that they don't. I think that,
No, even where I teach, every kid has a school email, and there aren't restrictions. And when I email them, they don't get it. They should text me. I don't
Yeah.
text. Sorry,
It's
but
true.
they don't. Kids don't use email anymore. They're really getting away from it.
But what we know is, so we're having a great conversation because we're adults. We have all different experiences that have brought us here now, and for most of us, email of some sort was a component of it. In communication. When I send out resumes to my new employer, they said, give an email address or submit your resume here and things like that. That they won't all be going to college. They may not be. They may not have. I know we're saying that a lot of kids already have it, Teddy. But like, oh my gosh, a lot of you in business, if you've seen applicants whose email address is completely inappropriate,
Oh yeah.
No,
and they put it on their resume and they send it in. So you think you'd think that,
It's the first thing I look at when I.
yeah. I agree with you that something within the English department potentially, or business writing or things like that, it's very useful. It really is. How to, start off some sort of communication, what the body is, breaking it up.
I would hope they do that already.
But I don't
use some
disagree.
punctuation, maybe to capital letter every once in a while, just like break it up so old eyes can see what you're doing. I don't know.
We're making progress.
Teach elementary kids how to write a letter.
That is true.
They're not writing letters anymore, so there's no reason why we're not transitioning that to the electronic format at that
Correct.
young of an age.
Correct.
Just like asking your kid to sign their name. And they say like, what is that?
So when you did
Squiggle.
this, when you did this email discussion, did you include any of the high school kids on it to say, hey, what do you think of this? Would this work, or or you're not going to use it anyway? Because we
There-
don't want to waste everybody's time.
There are students on the building leadership team. But what I did hear Bill saying, his concern was that it's professional, it's affiliated with the school. I think that's a component that they can build into this thing.
Yeah.
That their signature is, or they reach out initially with their own school email, whatever it is, to say, I'm representing this organization, this is who I am, this is what I'm trying to do. I see merit in that too. That's a part of the professionalism we're talking about.
Right.
Yeah.
I can tell you they get a lot of emails when they start applying to colleges. So if our school's gonna flag it, it definitely would.
Better start with the seniors and juniors and get it, push them through.
Juniors and seniors, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, at this point, wouldn't even.
I'd
I'm not even
concentrate
sure
on-
this year's seniors that would
Yeah,
make a
probably
difference.
too
It's
late.
almost sophomores and juniors. So, okay. Anything else on old business?
Brian, one other thing, as we're going through the budget process, is there a way to start to see and look at the data of where students are coming out of the pandemic? I know we had to put a lot of disaster funds towards interventions. What are we doing? Is it closing the gap? Or are we still seeing that we've got work to do? So I think that has to be kind of a milestone to look at now, and then what's it look like in the future?
Can I just add that I think we're gonna dive into that a little bit tomorrow at our CNI meeting, and then maybe we, as the CNI committee members, we can talk about what we would maybe want to bring here to the public. I think you're right. And there's things that are, well, as we go through kind of some data discussions tomorrow, we're going to see where there are some kind of wows, and we thought there were gaps and there aren't, or there was huge gains. And then there are things that we're like, okay, that makes sense, because we just spent this amount of time in a COVID type of world. So, yeah.
And then we just hit the traditional school year halfway through.
Sure.
Do we have kids that are failing 1, 2 subjects? Are they going to be able to rebound?
Yeah.
Okay. Good. BOE committee reports, Building and Grounds Committee meeting minutes are attached. We have no policy adoptions, hearings and petitions. I apologize if I don't say your name right. Joy Iafallo? We did it. All right.
I just wanted to take a minute to talk about the W Becker Playground. I think you were kind of trying to touch on it, Dr. Bailey, when you said the part about the blacktop and equipment. I don't know if that was included in your conversation with Bill, you said. I think you mean Bill Schramm. Just trying to figure out who everybody's talking about. But anyway, the W Becker Playground, it totally needs to be replaced. The newest part of the playground is 18 years old. The swings I utilized, I'm sure you utilize them as well. So the swings are extremely, not gonna say old.
Called you out.
Well, I mean, I utilize them as well. But anyway, I think that everybody's aware of like the age and like the broken slide and like how the kids can't really use it so well. The older kids go to the back because the back one is supposed to be for older kids, but talking to my 5th grader, she's not really interested in using it. It just all needs to be updated. I mean, there has to be like a whole plan in order to change it all, I'm certain. We got together a committee just to talk about it off of the A.W. Becker PTA, so we were kind of just talking about a plan of, you know, what other playgrounds have done and what our kids like and what they'd actually use. So that's the route that we were going. Reaching out to you, Dr. Bailey, I know that you want to possibly utilize like a capital project. My concern is just time frame. Like, I know once that happens, like I believe it takes a long time. I don't know the actual time frame of a capital project, but of what I've looked up prior to, that usually takes some time. So just to give an example of what I don't want to happen, last year we were approached to buy some outdoor furniture, some water tables, things like that in April. I immediately purchased them. They came in the beginning of May. They went somewhere, and I immediately said, can we get together a committee and put them together? No, the, what do you call the janitors? The OEM, he has to break out an area or something. Anyway, they're still in a box somewhere. So when I get a request like that as part of the PTA, I just hear it from the teachers, hear what they need. I want to get them what they need in the quickest time possible. That's what I think I did. And the fact that they're still, I don't even know where they are actually, because the PTA doesn't have any storage at the elementary school anymore. So they're somewhere. I just don't want to see the same thing happen with the playground. I would like to see the committee that we got together actually be utilized. I would like to utilize PTA funds, donations, whatever we need to do to get it done. I just don't want to hear like, hey, that's a great idea. We'll do it in like 6 years or when your kids are seniors. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Upcoming activities, CNI committee meeting tomorrow. February recess is next week. BOE petitions are now available online in the district office. I do think we have some sports teams that are, girls and boys basketball play sectionals, I think, this weekend. I believe some of the track stars may be off to states. Then the following week will be states, so they're in wrestling as well. Okay. And we have no need to go into executive session. I have a motion to adjourn. Mr. McFerrin, a second. Mr. Hislop, all in favor? All right.